In this video, I'm going to break down the shots that I got at a recent basketball game to show you the settings and the gear that I use to film high quality videos and my thought process when I'm filming a sports game to make sure that I'm getting the best shots possible. Hey, what's going on? My name is Sarellas. I'm a videographer and editor from Toronto, Canada. I specialize in sports videography, and I did a video on the channel recently where I went to a basketball game and compared the FX3 and the FX30 cameras from Sony to see if it was worth it to buy the FX3 or if you're better off getting the FX30 specifically for filming basketball. But today I want to take some of the shots I got at that game and at another game that I'm going to be posting a video on the channel about soon, so make sure you're subscribed for that, and actually go over the cinematography principles, I guess we're going to call them, that I use when I'm filming basketball to make sure that I'm getting compelling shots, and kind of like what I look for in my go-to shots when I'm filming the sport, or when I'm filming any sports really. I guess you could call this like a sports videography shot list, or things to at least keep in mind when you're filming sports. So we're going to go through this Instagram post that I made today, just showing some of my best shots from across these two games, kind of relating back to this video, and talk about the different shots that I got and what makes them good or why I shot them in the way that I did. So the first shot that I want to talk about is this wide angle below the rim shot. And this is a shot that I always look to get, especially during warm-ups. I think that the perspective of being able to get really close to your subject and shoot them from a wide angle is a unique one, and that's why I like doing it. It's easy to do this type of thing for basketball during warm-ups because you know where everyone's going to go. It's very predictable that guys are going to drive towards the rim, and players also like showing off their athleticism during warm-ups a lot of the time, so you're pretty much guaranteed to get good stuff. Like, the level of access you have at a venue is going to vary depending on the level that you're shooting at and what your affiliation is with the game. So if you can get close to under the rim during the game and get some wide angle stuff, especially with players coming at you, I think that looks really dynamic. This shot was filmed in 60 frames per second. I'm pretty sure that the shutter was overcranked to 1/250 and it was on the FX3, but I'm going to put all this information with every shot as I show it, so if I don't say all the settings out loud, they'll all be on the screen for you. That type of shot is really nice in my opinion because it doesn't look like anything you're going to get on a broadcast. Like, the broadcast angle isn't going to show you something this close with a player running at you like this. You'll probably get a higher angle from the broadcast and maybe an eye level shot that's really tight, but you're not going to get something like this for the most part. And I think because of that, it makes your videos stand out. Another thing that I like doing is shooting wide angle in other areas of the court. This is also a shot that I got during warm-ups, and it's in 60 frames per second. But it's really nice because, again, it gives you a unique perspective on a player that you're not going to get otherwise. It has some really nice backlighting with the stadium lights. It looks really dynamic. I think it makes this player look really powerful to shoot up at them from a low angle, which kind of takes me to my next point. Shooting up from a low angle just makes your subject look powerful no matter when you do it, like regardless of your framing or your lens. And as sports videographers, I think we generally want to shoot low and up at our subjects to make them look powerful. Here's a really good example of that in game. This is kind of combining the idea of shooting wide at the rim from a low angle and just shooting up to make your subject look powerful and utilize those stadium lights to get a nice cinematic looking backlight. I know that word's overused, but I think it's the best way to describe it. That backlight just kind of looks cinematic and beautiful, and that's why I like shooting low pointing up a lot of the time. So this shot's also in 60 frames per second. We have a big man who goes up and gets his rebound. I'm just keeping him center framed and trying to keep as much of his body in as possible, and we get a nice dunk, and he hangs on the rim and stares down the defender, gives him a little bit of a bump. It's a really nice reaction shot that shows a lot of emotion, kind of subtly. If I could have changed something about this shot, I would have loved to frame it right here so that this part at the top isn't in the frame. Just kind of like pan down a little bit, get both of his feet in the frame. But it's still a pretty good shot, and it gives you that unique vantage point that you're only going to get when you're courtside. And obviously that's not the only thing that you want to show in your videos, but it's something that you want to make sure you're including because it draws viewers in and gives them that look that they can't get anywhere else. So the next type of shot that I want to talk about is a detail shot. And I think that these detail shots, though I am using the word a little bit loosely, make or break your video. And when I say a detail shot, I really mean anything that isn't the actual game. So this can be a player spinning the ball in their hands during a free throw, a player's expression on the bench in the huddle, a close-up of cheerleaders' pom-poms, a locked-off shot of the crowd clapping or cheering. Anything of that nature I'm calling detail shots. There's tons of these detail shots that you can capture throughout a game, and it's really like up to your creative discretion to figure them out. So I have this shot here. I'm just pushing in on a player at the bench. I think it looks pretty good. Then we have a low light shot of a cheerleader dancing, just getting the crowd hyped up. This is a good shot to use maybe over the course of the intro of a video. If you're just doing a quick cut sequence with lots of flashing lights and fast action and movement, this shot could easily fit in there. Here's another similar shot, a close-up on pom-poms, and I've got a nice backlight here. I'm using the Jumbotron actually as my backlight, and I just think that this low light stuff looks pretty cool, and the FX3 in 60 frames per second does a really good job of capturing it at ISO 12800. There's going to be an instance pre-game where the lights all come down, it gets really dark, and I'm going to need something that performs really well in low lights to capture some key establishing shots. And so I make sure that I come ready with a camera that's prepared to perform in those low light conditions. Same thing, mascot waving a flag. It's not exactly the game. Maybe you would just brush this off and not capture it. But if you're going to establish the pregame before the actual action begins, all these other shots of other things that are happening are really important. Then we have this shot, which I really like. This is a player spinning the ball, getting ready for his free throw, and we have a bit of foreground element. I like that you can frame the player right here, right between the referee's legs. I know that referees blocking us is the most annoying thing when you're filming sports, and it happens all the time filming basketball, but having foreground elements in your shot can actually look pretty cool. So if you can try to get creative and frame your subjects around or within foreground elements, even if that foreground element is a referee's legs right next to you, it can look pretty nice. And I think this frame is really intriguing, and I really like this shot a lot for something this simple as spinning a ball during a free throw. Or even a shot like this can be a really compelling detail shot when a player is in a huddle or sitting on the bench. It's a great opportunity when you're filming basketball or really any sport to get right up close and get a shot showing a player's expression, because there's not many times when you're filming sports that a player is actually going to be stagnant for a long enough period of time for you to like line up a really thoughtful shot and just sit there and wait for the right expression on their face that you need to convey your story. To get in there, get some other foreground elements blurry in front of your subject, make sure their face is clear and in focus, set it to manual focus, and just really line it up if you need to. And then film something like this where you're really capturing a player's expression and conveying their emotion through that. Like, that's really powerful in a detail shot that I always love to get. So this is in 60 frames per second, and I film pretty much everything in 60 frames per second when I'm in a huddle like this. Every video kind of needs that moment to pause and slow the action down, settle into a huddle, and maybe drive the story forward with some audio to go along with your visuals before jumping back into that exciting game action. And one of the ways that I like capturing game action, apart from that low angle wide shot that I was talking about before, is the fans' point of view. So I love getting into the top of the lower concourse or in with the fans in the crowd and filming shots of the action from there. Here you can see that I have some fans' heads blurry in the foreground as a player goes up for a dunk, and I think incorporating foreground elements, that makes the image more compelling. And in general, I really like this point of view because you don't miss any shots, which if you're filming a game alone is fantastic. And it looks broadcast-esque because it's kind of the same place the broadcast cameras will film from, but it looks a little bit different because you're off to the side and you're incorporating like different elements in the foreground and you have more depth of field. And it's just generally a more cinematic style that you're shooting, obviously, than broadcast if you're shooting with a cinema camera or one of those higher end mirrorless cameras. I'm shooting everything a little bit wider. As you can tell, we actually have a full body with lots of space on either side. And in general, when I do these, I'm just trying to center frame my subjects and follow the ball, because it makes it really easy to cut everything for social as well. And nowadays, when you're doing what we do, you're pretty much always going to be utilizing your video for social as well as horizontal use cases like in Arena or YouTube. Something that this client wanted and that a lot of clients end up wanting is like fast turnaround time on social content. So if I keep everyone center framed, it's really easy when I'm cutting something for social to just cut the sides off, scale it down to that 9:16 vertical frame, and send it off without doing a bunch of reframing. And I can do that in game during a timeout or at halftime. Something to keep in mind for these shots is you want to make sure that you're shooting them with lots of fans in the background. A big no-no for any sports game is to show empty seats. So this shot here, you can see that I've incorporated people in the foreground like we talked about, and I'm shooting it nice and wide so you can see everybody's body and some of the fans in the background. There's not very many empty seats here at all. And as our player goes up for a dunk, we have him nice and sharp in the frame and a bunch of people on the baseline, some people's heads looking at him as he dunks, and this subject right in the middle of it all. So I think that makes this a really compelling shot. And in general, you want to try to work lots of fans and lots of foreground elements into your high angle shots so that they blend in seamlessly with your video and still give the viewer that fresh and unique perspective rather than just keeping them on the baseline all the time. Now, the last thing I want to talk about, and the number one thing that you have to capture when you're filming basketball or really any sport or event period, is emotion. Rather than the moment, you want to capture and convey the emotion associated with it. And capturing emotion isn't always easy. Sometimes you need to be a little bit lucky and end up in the right place at the right time. Obviously, understanding the game that you're filming or how the event that you're filming is laid out helps a lot. So for me, knowing basketball and understanding when those emphatic moments are going to happen helps me put myself in the right position to capture those emotional moments. And I'm not even talking about big emotions all the time. I'm talking about like smaller emotional moments within the game too. So here's a shot of a player hitting a three, and then I pan over to him and he gives the celebration like really, really quickly, like he was kind of timid about it, and then a chest bump with his teammate. And that's emotional as well. Whereas this is a game-winning alley-oop for the win. Obviously, this shot is very emotional, and I did switch to 120 frames per second for this shot because it's at the end of the game, and I like filming those crucial moments where I know lots of emotion are going to happen at the end of a game in 120 frames per second where I can. And then this shot in 120 frames per second, the guy who just got the game-winning alley-oop dunk, getting a water bottle bath, is obviously a very emotional moment. This shot, obviously, I would have liked to frame it differently. One, I'm at the wrong baseline. I would have loved to be at the other baseline and shoot this shot with that wide, low-angle perspective like we talked about earlier, but I think this shot is still pretty good. And then I follow the ball, and this is the money shot right here. We're out of focus, and we come into focus right around here as the player's hanging on the rim, which is a good enough moment for me when played back to hold on. And we get the shot of all the fans at the bottom jumping, the player holding onto the rim and giving a fist bump as he flies off the rim. I'm kind of torn on the framing of this shot because I wanted the fire here to get in the shot, but framing that in gives me a ton of blank space here and here. And just like, I'd rather this not exist. Obviously, if you're cropping this shot for social, then getting the dunk and the flames and the backboard going off all in the shot and just cutting off the sides is great. But here, I don't want these corner areas in the shot. So I don't know how to frame this shot down a little bit. It's just tricky to frame this up for a 16:9 frame when the stands don't go all the way up. But this is what we have to deal with sometimes. I think it still looks all right. And again, rather than worrying about the framing and the composition of things, this shot, in my opinion, conveys the emotion of a victory. You can see the genuine enthusiasm on the player as he comes down from the rim. You can see the enthusiasm on the fans. And then this shot, these types of shots are honestly just kind of chaos. Sometimes you just need to have a little bit of hustle when you're filming events and get to the right spot at the right time. Like when you see somebody running at the player who just made a big play with a water bottle, you better also be running at the player who just made that big play. to capture them dumping the water bottle on him. So I just ran over and lined the shot up as fast as I could. Obviously, I would have liked to frame my subject over here. I don't know why I'm pointing with my finger, like you know what I'm pointing at. I would have liked to frame my subject over here on the left side of the frame, more in the middle, but I was also kind of getting soaked with water. So, you know, trying my best and not doing terrible, but not doing the best. And there was a bit of a focus hunt there. You could see at the end as well. Here, you can see we go out of focus just a little bit here as we accidentally focus on some water in the foreground because I wasn't holding my autofocus. Again, this is me trying to avoid getting all of my camera equipment soaked. But the essence of the shot, like this part and the player getting drenched and the extra water coming in, stop it right here. That conveys the emotion. We don't need the rest of it. So although it could have been better, the fact that the shot conveys emotion means it's a shot that I can use and it's a shot that I can be happy with. Even if, like, from a composition standpoint or a cinematography perspective, when you're on the run like this, you're not able to make it look as best as you possibly could if you were given ample time. Anyways, that's some of the stuff that I look for when I'm filming sports and some of the shots that I got with the gear and the settings that I used to get them at a couple of recent basketball games that I filmed. If you like this video, please subscribe to the channel because I post videography and video editing tips and tutorial videos similar to this one on a regular basis, and I would love to have you around for that. If you liked this style of video and want to see more of it, let me know in the comments because I don't do these too often, but I definitely can do more of them. And if you have any questions, obviously you can drop them all down there as well. And that's going to be all for this one. So until next time, peace.